The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Command compound in Coronado, California. Lieutenant Sarah Chun stood at attention in the briefing room, her dark eyes fixed straight ahead as Admiral Morrison reviewed her file for what felt like the 100th time. Around her, 12 Navy SEALs shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, their skeptical glances burning holes through her uniform. "Gentlemen," Admiral Morrison began, closing the thick manila folder with a decisive snap. "Meet your new team member. Lieutenant Chun has completed all required training and earned her place on Team 7. A barely audible snort came from the back row. Sarah didn't need to turn around to know. It came from Petty Officer Jake Martinez, whose reputation for dismissing female operators was well known throughout the command. His whispered comment to his teammate was just loud enough for her to hear, "Great, now we're babysitting." Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she maintained her composure. She had expected this reaction. Despite the military's official policy of gender integration in special operations, the reality on the ground was far different. She was only the third woman to ever make it through the grueling selection process for this particular SEAL team, and the previous two had been transferred out within 6 months. Commander David Hawk Harrison, the team leader, stood up slowly. His weathered face showed years of combat experience in Afghanistan and Iraq. Deep lines around his eyes spoke of countless missions under harsh desert sun and bitter mountain cold. At 42, he was old for a SEAL, but his reputation was legendary. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority earned through blood and sacrifice. "Listen up." Hawk's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "I don't care what any of you think about integration policies or political correctness. Lieutenant Chun is here because she earned it. She passed every test, completed every challenge, and met every standard we set. The same standards that broke stronger men than most of you." The room fell silent. Eva Martinez stopped his quiet commentary. Sarah had indeed earned her place through extraordinary effort. Her journey had begun 3 years earlier when she was serving as a Navy intelligence officer aboard the USS Carl Vinson. During a routine deployment in the Persian Gulf, their ship had been tasked with providing intelligence support for a high-priority SEAL mission. Sarah had been working 18-hour days, analyzing satellite imagery and intercepted communications to help plan the operation. On the night of the mission, everything had gone wrong. The intelligence had been compromised, and the SEAL team found themselves walking into an ambush. Sarah was monitoring communications from the ship when she heard the desperate calls for immediate extraction. Without hesitation, she had grabbed her gear and volunteered to pilot one of the rescue helicopters, despite having no official flight training beyond basic familiarity. Her quick thinking and natural flying ability had helped extract the team under heavy fire. 2 SEALs had been wounded, and without her intervention, they might not have made it home. That night, she had made a decision that would change her life forever. She was going to become a SEAL. The path had been brutal. First came months of additional physical training to meet the demanding standards. Sarah was naturally athletic, having been a competitive swimmer and runner in college, but SEAL training required a different level of fitness entirely. She spent her off-duty hours in the gym, running endless miles on the beach, and practicing combat swimming techniques. Then came the formal application process, which involved extensive psychological evaluation, medical screening, and interviews with senior officers. Many questioned whether she had the mental toughness required for special operations. The evaluation process took 8 months, during which time Sarah continued her intelligence duties while secretly preparing for the challenges ahead. Basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, known simply as BUD/S, was a 24-week odyssey designed to break the human spirit. Of the 180 candidates who started Sarah's class, only 23 graduated. The notorious Hell Week alone eliminated more than half the remaining candidates. 4 5.5 days, trainees were allowed only 4 hours of sleep total while enduring constant physical and mental challenges. Sarah's breaking point came on the 3rd day of Hell Week. She was carrying a heavy telephone pole with 5 teammates through the surf when hypothermia began setting in. Her body was shutting down, and her vision was becoming blurry. The instructors were screaming at her team to move faster, but her legs felt like concrete pillars. "Chun!" Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez had barked in her face. "You ready to ring the bell? Your warm bed is waiting." The bell sat on a post near the training area. Any candidate could ring it 3 times and walk away from the program immediately. No shame, no judgment, just a hot meal and a warm, dry place to sleep. At that moment, it was the most tempting sound in the world. But Sarah thought about the wounded SEALs she had helped rescue. She thought about her father, a Marine veteran who had always taught her that quitting was not an option. Most importantly, she thought about proving that she belonged here, not because of her gender, but despite it. She had grabbed the telephone pole with renewed determination and kept moving. The rest of BUD/S had been equally challenging. There was the pool competency test, where candidates had to complete underwater exercises while instructors tried to drown them in a controlled environment. Sarah had passed, but not before nearly blacking out twice. Combat diving phase tested their ability to navigate underwater with heavy equipment while under extreme stress. Many strong swimmers failed this portion, but Sarah's background in competitive swimming gave her an advantage. Land warfare phase introduced weapons training, demolitions, and small unit tactics. Here, Sarah's intelligence background proved valuable. She had a natural ability to read terrain and anticipate enemy movements. Her instructors noted her tactical thinking in their evaluations, though they remained skeptical about her physical capabilities. The final phase was airborne training, where candidates learned to parachute into combat zones. Sarah had discovered she had no fear of heights, and her small frame actually gave her better control during descent. She graduated in the top 10% of her class for airborne operations. But BUD/S was only the beginning. After graduation came 18 months of specialized training in combat medicine, advanced weapons systems, languages, and regional studies. Sarah had chosen to specialize in Middle Eastern operations, learning Arabic and studying the cultural complexities of modern warfare in urban environments. Now, standing in this briefing room, she was finally ready for her first assignment with an operational team. But the skeptical faces around her made it clear that her real test was just beginning. Hawk continued his address to the team. "Our next mission briefing is in 48 hours. Until then, Chim will participate in all training exercises and team activities. I want to see how she integrates with the unit." As the meeting broke up, the team members filed out in small groups, their conversations hushed but intense. Sarah could feel their eyes on her as she gathered her materials. She had expected this reception, but experiencing it firsthand was still unsettling. Petty Officer First Class Mike Thompson approached her as she headed for the door. Thompson was the team's communications specialist, a quiet professional with 15 years of service. His reputation for fairness and competence made him one of the most respected members of the unit. "Chun," he said quietly, "don't let the attitude get to you. They're not bad guys, they're just protective of the team. Prove yourself in training, and they'll come around." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Thanks for the advice. I plan to do exactly that." As she walked across the compound toward her assigned quarters, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The nickname Falcon had emerged during her final training exercise when she had demonstrated an uncanny ability to spot enemy positions from great distances. Her instructors had noted that she seemed to have the eyes of a bird of prey, capable of seeing details that others missed entirely. She didn't know it yet, but that nickname would soon take on a much deeper meaning. In just a few weeks, her unique abilities would save the lives of her teammates and change their perception of her forever. The skeptical SEALs who now questioned her presence would soon understand exactly why she was called Falcon. That evening, Sarah sat in her small room reviewing mission files and equipment manuals. Outside her window, she could hear the team conducting evening physical training on the beach. Their voices carried on the ocean breeze, mixing camaraderie with competitive banter. She wanted desperately to be part of that brotherhood, but She knew it would take time and proven performance to earn their respect. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her father. "How's the new assignment going, kiddo?" Sarah smiled as she typed back. "Day 1 complete. They're still deciding what to make of me. Just remember what I taught you," came his quick reply. "Actions speak louder than words. Show them who you are." As she prepared for sleep, Sarah thought about the challenges ahead. Tomorrow would bring her first full day of training with the team. Physical fitness tests, weapons qualification, tactical exercises, and countless other evaluations designed to measure her readiness for combat operations. She was ready. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment, and she wasn't about to waste the opportunity. The team might not trust her yet, but she was confident that would change. She had overcome every obstacle placed in her path so far, and she intended to continue that pattern. The sound of ocean waves provided a steady rhythm outside her window as Sarah drifted off to sleep. Tomorrow would mark the real beginning of her journey with Team 7. She had no way of knowing that within a month, she would face a situation that would test not only her training and skills, but her ability to make split-second decisions under impossible pressure. The SEALs had named her Falcon for her extraordinary vision, but they were about to learn that her true strength lay in her ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. In the brutal world of special operations, that kind of clarity would prove more valuable than any physical strength or tactical knowledge. Her real test was still coming. 3 weeks into her assignment with Team 7, Sarah found herself flat against a concrete wall in a mock Middle Eastern village, sweat dripping down her face as simulated gunfire erupted around her. The training facility at Camp Pendleton was designed to replicate urban combat environments, complete with narrow alleyways, multi-story buildings, and hidden sniper positions. "Falcon, report." Hawk's voice crackled through her earpiece. Sarah pressed herself tighter against the wall and peered around the corner through her rifle scope. The training scenario involved rescuing a high-value target from a heavily defended compound. So far, her team had encountered more resistance than expected, and their carefully planned approach was falling apart. "I count 4 tangos on the rooftop, northeast corner," she whispered into her microphone. "2 more in the second-floor window, building 3. There's also movement in the alley between buildings 2 and 4, but I can't get a clear visual." Through her scope, Sarah could see details that her teammates were missing. The afternoon sun created deep shadows that concealed enemy positions, but her exceptional vision allowed her to spot the subtle movements that indicated hostile forces. It was this ability that had earned her the Falcon nickname, though she was beginning to understand it carried more weight than she had initially realized. Martinez's voice came through the comm system, tense with frustration. "We're pinned down here, Hawk. Every time we move, they light us up from 3 directions." The team had been stuck in their current position for nearly 20 minutes. In a real combat situation, that kind of delay would be unacceptable. Hostages could be executed, enemy reinforcements could arrive, or the entire mission could be compromised. Sarah could hear the growing tension in her teammates' voices as the training exercise dragged on without resolution. Thompson, positioned 50 meters to her left, was monitoring communications and coordinating with her simulated air support. "Hawk, we've got company incoming. Exercise controllers are indicating enemy reinforcements will arrive in 15 minutes. We need to move now." Sarah studied the compound through her scope, analyzing the enemy positions and looking for weaknesses in their defensive setup. Her intelligence background had trained her to think systematically about complex tactical problems, and she was beginning to see patterns that others might miss. "Hawk," she said quietly, "I think I see a way through." "Talk to me, Falcon." "The snipers on the northeast rooftop have a clear field of fire on our primary approach, but they can't see the maintenance shed behind Building 4. If I can get to that position, I'll have a clear shot on both rooftop positions and the window shooters in Building 3. There was a brief pause before Hawk responded. "That's a 100-meter sprint across open ground. You'll be completely exposed." Sarah had already considered that factor. Not if you create a distraction. Martinez and Jackson can lay down suppressing fire from the west side, while Thompson creates some electronic noise to confuse their communications. I only need about 30 seconds to reach cover. Commander Harrison weighed her proposal carefully. In the 3 weeks since Sarah had joined the team, she had consistently demonstrated sound tactical thinking, but this was the first time she had volunteered for such a high-risk maneuver. The exercise was being monitored by senior officers, and any mistakes would be thoroughly analyzed in the after-action review. Rodriguez, Hawk called to their demolitions expert. Can you give us some smoke cover? Roger that. I've got 2 smoke grenades left. All right, Falcon. Here's how we'll play it. Rodriguez pops smoke in 30 seconds. Martinez and Jackson begin suppressing fire immediately after. Thompson, I want you to jam their radio frequency and create some confusion. Falcon, you move on my mark. Sarah checked her weapon and adjusted her gear for the sprint ahead. Her heart rate was elevated, but her breathing remained steady. The weeks of intensive training with the team had pushed her physical conditioning to new levels, and she felt confident in her ability to make the run successfully. Smoke out, Rodriguez called. Gray smoke began billowing across the training area as Martinez and Jackson opened fire on the enemy positions. The sound of automatic weapons filled the air, and the exercise controllers activated additional pyrotechnics to simulate the chaos of real combat. Go, 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 Hawk shouted. Sarah sprinted from her covered position, her boots pounding against the sandy ground as she raced toward the maintenance shed. Simulated bullets whined overhead as the opposing force tried to track her movement through the smoke. Her legs pumped steadily as she covered the distance in what felt like slow motion. Halfway to her destination, she heard Thompson's voice in her earpiece. Falcon, you've got a shooter in the window, building 5. He's tracking your movement. Without breaking stride, Sarah spotted the muzzle flash from the corner of her eye. She dove into a combat roll just as the exercise controller fired a paint round that would have struck her in the chest. She came up running and reached the maintenance shed just as the smoke began to clear. From her new position, Sarah had perfect lines of sight on multiple enemy positions. Through her rifle scope, she could see the exercise role players who were simulating enemy combatants. Her training kicked in as she began systematically engaging targets. Tango down, northeast rooftop, she called as she fired her first paint round. Tango down, building 3, second floor. Tango down, building 5, window. Within 90 seconds, Sarah had eliminated 6 simulated enemy combatants, clearing the way for her teammates to advance on the compound. The exercise controllers called simulation complete as Team 7 successfully reached their objective and secured the simulated hostage. As the team regrouped for debriefing, Sarah noticed a change in her teammates' demeanor. The skeptical glances had been replaced by looks of grudging respect. Martinez approached her as she was cleaning her weapon. Nice shooting, Chun, he said quietly. That was solid tactical thinking. It was the first compliment he had given her since she joined the team, and Sarah appreciated the gesture. Thanks. The whole team executed perfectly. That suppressing fire gave me exactly the cover I needed. Thompson joined their conversation, grinning broadly. Did you see the look on the exercise controller's face when you took out those rooftop positions? He couldn't believe the accuracy at that range. The debriefing session was led by Master Chief Petty Officer Williams, a veteran with 25 years of special operations experience. His analysis of training exercises was legendary for its thoroughness and brutal honesty. No mistake went unnoticed, and no success went unanalyzed. Overall, solid performance. Master Chief Williams began. Response time was acceptable, communication was clear, and the final assault was executed with precision. However, I want to focus on the problem-solving aspect of this exercise. He pulled up a tactical map of the training area on his laptop and projected it onto the wall screen. Your team was stuck for 20 minutes because you were trying to force a frontal assault against a well-defended position. Classic mistake. You had superior training and equipment, but the enemy had better positioning. Williams highlighted Sarah's movement during the exercise. Lieutenant Chen's flanking maneuver changed the entire dynamic of the engagement. By taking the initiative and accepting calculated risk, she created opportunities for the entire team. That's the kind of tactical thinking that wins real battles. The praise felt good, but Sarah remained focused on areas for improvement. Master Chief, I was wondering about the communication delay when I first proposed the flanking route. In a real combat situation, that hesitation could be costly. Williams nodded approvingly. Good observation. Team integration is about more than just individual skills. It's about developing trust and understanding how each member thinks under pressure. Commander Harrison had to weigh your proposal against his knowledge of your capabilities. That calculation will become faster as the team works together more. After the debriefing, Hawk pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. They walked toward the beach, where the sound of waves provided privacy for their discussion. John, Hawk began, I owe you an explanation about the team's initial reaction to your assignment. Sarah listened carefully, knowing this conversation had been inevitable since her first day with the unit. It's not about your gender, Hawk continued. It's about the fact that these guys have been working together for 3 years. They've been through combat deployments, training accidents, and personal crises together. When someone new joins the team, regardless of who they are, it disrupts that dynamic. He paused to watch a pelican diving for fish in the surf. What happened today in the exercise was important. Not because you showed good marksmanship or tactical thinking, but because you demonstrated that you're willing to put the team's success ahead of your own safety. That's what being a SEAL is really about. Sarah nodded, understanding the deeper meaning of his words. I appreciate the feedback, sir. I know I still have a lot to prove. Actually, Hawk said with a slight smile, I think you've proven more than you realize. The guys have been talking, and the consensus is that you're fitting in well. Martinez even suggested we recommend you for advanced sniper training. The recommendation for sniper school was a significant vote of confidence. Advanced marksmanship training was highly competitive and reserved for operators who demonstrated exceptional shooting ability and mental discipline. It was also a clear signal that the team was beginning to see her as a permanent member rather than a temporary assignment. That evening, Sarah called her father to update him on her progress. Sounds like you're winning them over, he said after she described the day's training exercise. I think so, Dad. It's been challenging, but I feel like I'm finally becoming part of the team. Just remember, kiddo, respect is earned through consistent performance, not single events. Keep doing what you're doing, and everything else will fall into place. As they talked, Sarah watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean from her barracks window. The golden light reminded her of the desert sunsets she had seen during her deployment in the Middle East. Those experiences seemed like a lifetime ago, but they had shaped her decision to pursue special operations training. Her father's voice brought her back to the present. Any word on when you might get your first operational deployment? Not yet, but Hawk mentioned that we're likely to get tasked with something within the next few months. There's a lot of activity in the Middle East right now, and experienced teams are in high demand. What Sarah didn't know was that their first mission together would come much sooner than expected. In just 2 weeks, Team 7 would receive an urgent deployment order that would test every aspect of their training and teamwork. The mission would take place in a remote region where conventional military tactics would be useless, and success would depend entirely on the team's ability to adapt and improvise under extreme pressure. The exercise that day had been important for building trust and confidence, but it would pale in comparison to the challenges ahead. Sarah's unique abilities would soon be put to the ultimate test, and her teammates would finally understand why she had earned the call sign Falcon. Her exceptional vision was just the beginning. Her real strength lay in her ability to see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. The ocean waves continued their eternal rhythm as Sarah ended her phone call and prepared for another day of training. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself worthy of the SEAL trident she wore proudly on her uniform. She was ready for whatever came next. The emergency briefing came at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning in late October. Sarah was awakened by the shrill sound of her emergency communicator, a device that meant only one thing: immediate deployment. She rolled out of bed, grabbed her pre-packed gear, and was dressed and moving toward the briefing room within 4 minutes. Team 7 assembled in the secure conference room within 10 minutes of the alert. Despite the early hour, every member was alert and focused. This was what they had trained for, and their bodies had been conditioned to respond instantly to emergency calls. Admiral Morrison stood at the front of the room with a grim expression that immediately told Sarah this was not a routine mission. Behind him, multiple screens displayed satellite imagery of a mountainous region she didn't immediately recognize. "Gentlemen and Lady," Admiral Morrison began, "12 hours ago we lost contact with a CIA operative in northern Pakistan. Agent Rebecca Walsh was conducting surveillance on a high-value target when her last transmission indicated she was being pursued by hostile forces." The satellite images showed rugged terrain with steep mountain slopes and deep valleys. Sarah could see what appeared to be small villages scattered throughout the region, connected by narrow roads that looked barely suitable for vehicle traffic. Agent Walsh's last known position was approximately 15 kilometers from the Afghan border in a region controlled by Taliban forces. Intelligence indicates she may have been captured and is being held in one of several possible locations. Thompson raised his hand. "Sir, what about conventional rescue assets? Can't we use helicopter-based quick reaction forces?" Admiral Morrison shook his head. "The terrain makes helicopter operations extremely dangerous, and the political situation requires a minimal footprint. The Pakistani government cannot know about this operation. If Agent Walsh's presence becomes public, it could damage our relationship with a crucial ally." Hawk studied the terrain maps carefully. "What's our timeline, sir?" "Agent Walsh has been missing for approximately 14 hours. Intelligence suggests that if she's been captured, she'll likely be moved to a more secure location within the next 24 to 48 hours. After that, extraction becomes exponentially more difficult." Sarah examined the satellite imagery while listening to the briefing. The mountainous terrain reminded her of areas she had studied during her intelligence training, but the remote location and limited infrastructure presented unique challenges. Standard SEAL tactics were designed for coastal operations or urban environments, not high-altitude mountain rescue missions. "Your insertion will be by halo jump from 30,000 feet," Admiral Morrison continued. "You'll land approximately 10 kilometers from Agent Walsh's last known position and move overland to conduct search and rescue operations. Extraction will depend on mission success, but helicopter pickup is planned for a landing zone 15 kilometers south of the target area." Halo stood for high altitude, low opening, a parachuting technique that allowed operators to avoid radar detection by jumping from extreme altitude and opening their parachutes very late in the descent. It was a dangerous procedure that required extensive training and perfect execution. Rodriguez, their demolitions expert, studied the topographical maps. "Sir, what kind of opposition are we expecting?" Intelligence estimates indicate between 20 and 50 Taliban fighters in the immediate area, armed with small arms and possibly rocket-propelled grenades. They know the terrain intimately and have the advantage of local support. The odds were not encouraging. Team 7 consisted of 6 operators against potentially 50 enemies fighting on their home ground. Success would require perfect planning, flawless execution, and probably a good deal of luck. Admiral Morrison continued the briefing. "Agent Walsh is carrying critical intelligence about planned terrorist attacks against American interests. Her capture or death could compromise ongoing operations and put hundreds of lives at risk. This mission is classified at the highest level, and failure is not an option." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This would be her first operational mission with the team, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Everything she had trained for over the past 3 years had led to this moment. "You'll have 6 hours to prepare and depart," Admiral Morrison concluded. "Detailed mission planning will be conducted during flight." Questions? The room was silent. Every member of Team 7 understood the gravity of the situation and the challenges ahead. As they filed out of the briefing room, Hawk gathered the team for initial planning. "All right, people, you heard the timeline. We need to be wheels up by 1,000 hours. Equipment loadout, weapons check, and final briefing in 3 hours. Sarah spent the next several hours meticulously preparing her gear. Her sniper rifle received special attention, as her marksmanship skills might be crucial in the mountainous terrain. She also packed additional medical supplies, knowing that evacuation of wounded personnel would be extremely difficult in such a remote location. The flight to their insertion point took 8 hours aboard a modified C-130 transport aircraft. During the journey, the team studied detailed maps, reviewed intelligence reports, and planned their approach to the search area. Sarah used her intelligence background to analyze the satellite imagery and identify potential hiding places where Agent Walsh might be held. Based on the terrain and tactical considerations, Sarah told the team during flight planning, I think the most likely location is this compound here. She pointed to a cluster of buildings in a valley surrounded by steep hills. It's defensible, has multiple escape routes, and is far enough from main roads to avoid casual observation. Hawk studied her analysis carefully. What makes you think they'd choose that location over these other sites? The other compounds are either too exposed or too difficult to defend, Sarah explained. This location offers the best combination of security and tactical advantage. If I were holding a high-value prisoner, that's where I'd choose. Thompson nodded in agreement. The satellite imagery shows recent vehicle traffic leading to that compound. Could be supply runs or personnel movement. As they approached the drop zone, the team conducted final equipment checks and reviewed their plan one more time. They would insert as a single unit, move overland to the target area, conduct reconnaissance to confirm Agent Walsh's location, execute the rescue operation, and move to the extraction point. The Halo jump itself was executed perfectly despite challenging weather conditions. High winds and low visibility made navigation difficult, but all 6 team members landed within a few hundred meters of their intended drop zone. They quickly gathered their parachutes and began moving toward their objective. The terrain was even more challenging than the maps had indicated. Steep rocky slopes, loose shale, and limited vegetation made movement slow and dangerous. Sarah's physical conditioning, built through months of intensive training, was tested to its limits as they climbed toward their observation position. After 6 hours of difficult movement, they reached a ridge that overlooked the compound Sarah had identified during flight planning. Through her rifle scope, she could confirm that the location showed signs of recent activity. I count 12 individuals moving around the compound, she whispered into her microphone. Armed guards at the main entrance and what appears to be a lookout position on the highest building. Hawk studied the compound through his binoculars. Any sign of Agent Walsh? Sarah adjusted her scope and continued her surveillance. The afternoon sun created harsh shadows that made observation difficult, but her exceptional vision allowed her to pick out details that others might miss. There, she said quietly. Second building from the left, small window on the upper floor. I can see movement that doesn't match the patterns of the guards. Could be our target. Through her scope, Sarah could make out what appeared to be a figure moving behind barred windows. The movement was different from the purposeful activities of the guards, more restrained, possibly indicating someone whose movement was restricted. Distance to target? Hawk asked. Sarah calculated quickly. Approximately 800 meters with significant elevation change. Wind is variable, probably 8 to 12 knots from the southwest. The distance was at the extreme range of accurate rifle fire, and the mountainous terrain created unpredictable wind patterns that could affect bullet trajectory. Sarah would need to account for altitude, temperature, and wind conditions if shooting became necessary. All right, people, Hawk said quietly. We'll observe until dark, then move closer for detailed reconnaissance. We need to confirm Agent Walsh's location and identify the best approach for extraction. As they settled in for extended observation, Sarah continued monitoring the compound through her rifle scope. Her role was crucial. Her exceptional vision could identify threats and opportunities that other team members might miss. The nickname Falcon was proving more appropriate with each passing hour. What none of them realized was that their surveillance position had already been detected by enemy sentries. Taliban fighters were moving through the mountains around them, and Team 7 was about to find themselves surrounded by hostile forces. Sarah's unique abilities would soon be tested under the most extreme conditions imaginable, and the team would finally understand the true meaning behind her call sign. The sun was beginning to set behind the western peaks when Sarah noticed something that changed everything. Through her scope, she spotted movement on distant ridges that didn't belong, armed figures moving with tactical purpose toward their position. "Hawk," she whispered urgently, "we've got company coming." The mission was about to become much more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Agent Walsh's rescue would depend entirely on Team 7's ability to fight their way out of an impossible situation, and Sarah's extraordinary skills would be pushed to their absolute limits. The real test of her abilities was just beginning. Sarah's warning came just in time. Through her rifle scope, she counted at least 15 Taliban fighters moving along 3 separate ridgelines, clearly attempting to surround Team 7's observation position. Their tactical movement indicated this was not a random patrol. They had been detected, and the enemy was closing in for a coordinated attack. Multiple contacts bearing north-northwest, approximately 1,000 meters, and closing, Sarah whispered into her microphone. Additional movement on the eastern ridge. Looks like they're trying to cut off our escape route. Hawk processed this information quickly while studying the terrain around their position. They were caught on an exposed rocky outcrop with limited cover and no easy avenue of retreat. The Taliban fighters knew the mountains intimately and were using that advantage to systematically close off all possible escape routes. "How much time do we have?" Hawk asked. Sarah continued monitoring the enemy movements through her scope. Based on their current rate of advance, maybe 20 minutes before they are in effective firing range. But if they have any competent marksmen, we could start taking fire much sooner. The situation was rapidly becoming desperate. Team 7 was outnumbered at least 3-1, caught in unfavorable terrain, and facing an enemy that had every tactical advantage. Conventional military doctrine would suggest immediate withdrawal, but Agent Walsh was still trapped in the compound below, and abandoning her was not an option. "Thompson," Hawk called quietly. "What's our communication status with command?" Thompson checked his radio equipment and shook his head grimly. "The mountains are blocking our satellite communications. I can't establish contact with base or request immediate extraction." Rodriguez studied the enemy positions through his binoculars. "Boss, I've got enough explosives to create a diversion, but we'd have to get a lot closer to do any real damage." Martinez, their weapons specialist, was calculating ammunition supplies. "We got enough firepower for maybe 30 minutes of sustained combat, assuming we're not wasteful. After that, we'll be down to pistols and harsh language." Sarah continued her surveillance while listening to the team's tactical discussion. Through her scope, she could see the Taliban fighters moving with practiced efficiency, using the terrain to conceal their approach while maintaining communication between their separate elements. Their coordination suggested this was an experienced unit with effective leadership. But as she studied their movement patterns, Sarah began to notice something interesting. The enemy fighters were following predictable routes along the ridgelines, probably using trails they had traveled countless times before. More importantly, their attention was focused on surrounding Team 7's current position. They didn't seem to realize that the SEAL team had the mobility to relocate. "Hawk," Sarah said quietly, "I think I see an opportunity." Commander Harrison moved closer to her position. "Talk to me." "The Taliban are assuming we're going to stay put and fight from this position," Sarah explained. "But if we can relocate about 500 meters to the south, we'll have higher ground and better fields of fire. More importantly, we can attack the compound while they're still trying to surround this empty position." Hawk studied the terrain Sarah was indicating. The proposed position was indeed tactically superior, but reaching it would require movement across exposed ground while under potential enemy observation. It was a calculated risk that could either save the mission or get them all killed. "How long would it take to reach that position?" Hawk asked. "Maybe 15 minutes if we move fast and stay low," Sarah replied. "The good news is that their attention is focused on our current location. If we move now, we might be able to relocate without being detected. Thompson monitored the radio frequencies while the team considered their options. I'm picking up Taliban communications on several channels. They're definitely coordinating this operation, but they're using radio discipline, so I can't get much useful intelligence. The sound of distant gunfire suddenly echoed across the mountains as one of the Taliban units engaged what they thought was Team 7's position. The enemy had opened fire on empty rocks, confirming Sarah's assessment that they didn't know the SEAL team's exact location. That settles it, Hawk decided. We move to the alternate position. Rodriguez, can you rig a delayed explosive at this location to convince them we're still here? Rodriguez grinned and pulled out a small demolition charge. I can give you about a 10-minute delay, then they'll get a nice surprise that should keep their attention for a while. The team quickly gathered their equipment and prepared to move. Sarah took one final look through her rifle scope to memorize the enemy positions and movement patterns. Her exceptional vision would be crucial for navigating the dangerous terrain while avoiding detection. The movement to their new position was executed with the precision that came from months of intensive training. Each team member moved in carefully coordinated bounds, with Sarah using her rifle scope to provide overwatch and identify potential threats. The rough mountain terrain provided some concealment, but they were still exposed to observation from multiple directions. Halfway to their destination, Rodriguez's explosive charge detonated at their former position. The blast echoed across the mountains, and Sarah could see through her scope that the Taliban fighters were converging on the explosion site. The diversion had worked perfectly, giving Team 7 the opportunity to reach their new position undetected. From their new vantage point, Sarah had a clear view of both the compound where Agent Walsh was being held and the Taliban fighters were now searching the wrong location for Team 7. The tactical situation had improved dramatically, but they still faced overwhelming odds. "All right, people," Hawk said as they established their new position. "We've got maybe 30 minutes before they figure out we're not where they think we are. We need to move fast." Sarah studied the compound through her rifle scope with renewed focus. From this angle, she could see details that had been hidden from their previous position. "I can confirm our target is in the second building, upper floor. I count 4 guards in the immediate area, with at least 8 more spread throughout the compound." "What about approach routes?" Hawk asked. "There's a drainage ditch that runs along the western side of the compound. If we can reach it without being detected, it would provide covered approach to within 50 meters of the target building." Martinez checked his weapon and prepared for the assault. "How do we deal with the guards once we're in position?" This was where Sarah's unique abilities would prove most valuable. Her exceptional marksmanship skills, combined with her ability to see targets at extreme range, made her the perfect Overwatch sniper for the rescue operation. "I can provide sniper support from this position," Sarah said. "The range is long, but I've got clear sight lines to most of the compound. I can eliminate the perimeter guards and provide cover fire during the assault." Thompson calculated the distances involved. "That's almost a 1,000-meter shot in variable wind conditions." "Are you sure about this, Falcon?" Sarah had already considered all the factors involved. The extreme range, mountainous terrain, and wind conditions made it one of the most challenging shots she had ever attempted. But her training had prepared her for exactly this kind of situation, and her natural abilities gave her advantages that conventional snipers might not possess. "I'm sure," she said simply. The plan was refined quickly. Sarah would remain in the Overwatch position and eliminate key targets with precision rifle fire. The rest of the team would use the drainage ditch to approach the compound, rescue Agent Walsh, and fight their way to the extraction point. It was a simple plan which increased the chances of success under chaotic conditions. As the team prepared to execute the rescue, Sarah made final adjustments to her rifle scope and calculated the complex ballistics involved in extreme-range mountain shooting. She would have to account for bullet drop over nearly a kilometer of distance, wind drift caused by unpredictable mountain air currents, and the decreased air density at high altitude that would affect bullet velocity. "Falcon, you're cleared to engage," Hawk said as the assault team began moving toward the compound. Through her rifle scope, Sarah could see a Taliban guard walking along the compound's perimeter wall. At this range, he appeared tiny, barely larger than the crosshairs in her scope. She controlled her breathing, steadied her rifle, and began the mental calculations that would determine whether her shot would save or doom the mission. The first shot rang out across the mountain valley with a sharp crack that echoed off the rocky peaks. Sarah watched through her scope as the Taliban guard collapsed, struck by a bullet that had traveled nearly 1,000 meters with perfect accuracy. The other guards immediately went to alert status, but they couldn't identify the source of the sniper fire. "Target down," Sarah reported calmly, continuing to engage. Over the next 10 minutes, Sarah eliminated 6 Taliban guards with precision rifle fire that seemed almost supernatural in its accuracy. Each shot required split-second calculations and perfect execution, and she never missed. Her teammates moved through the compound with devastating efficiency, protected by sniper fire that eliminated threats before they could even identify the SEAL team's presence. The rescue of Agent Walsh was completed in less than 15 minutes. Thompson found her locked in a small room on the upper floor of the target building, weak but uninjured. She had been captured while conducting surveillance, but she had managed to conceal her most sensitive intelligence materials before being taken prisoner. As the team began moving toward the extraction point, the Taliban forces finally realized they had been outmaneuvered. Radio communications increased dramatically as enemy commanders tried to coordinate a response to the rescue operation. But by then, Team 7 was already moving through terrain that favored their mobility and training. Sarah provided overwatch during the withdrawal, using her exceptional vision to identify potential ambush sites and enemy movement. Her rifle eliminated several Taliban fighters who attempted to intercept the team's movement, and her tactical guidance helped them avoid larger enemy concentrations. The extraction was completed without additional casualties. Agent Walsh was successfully recovered with her intelligence intact, and Team 7 returned to base with a mission success that exceeded all expectations. But for Sarah, the most important outcome was the final acceptance by her teammates. During the post-mission debriefing, Martinez approached her with an expression of genuine respect. "Chun, I owe you an apology. I had doubts about whether you belonged on this team, but what you did out there was incredible. That shooting was some of the best I've ever seen." Thompson nodded in agreement. 8 confirmed kills at ranges over 800 meters in mountain conditions. That's not just good shooting, that's exceptional marksmanship. Hawk put the mission in perspective during his formal debrief with Admiral Morrison. "Sir, Lieutenant Chin's performance was outstanding. Her tactical thinking, marksmanship skills, and situational awareness were crucial to mission success. I recommend her for immediate recognition and consideration for advanced sniper training." But Sarah's thoughts were focused on the future rather than recognition for past accomplishments. The mission had proven that she belonged on Team 7, and she had finally earned the respect and trust of her teammates. More importantly, she had demonstrated that her unique abilities could make a real difference in life and death situations. Agent Walsh's intelligence proved crucial for preventing several planned terrorist attacks against American interests. The successful rescue operation saved hundreds of lives and protected ongoing intelligence operations throughout the region. For Sarah, knowing that her skills had contributed to such an important outcome was more satisfying than any formal recognition. In the weeks following the mission, Team 7 received new assignments and continued their training for future operations. But the dynamic had changed fundamentally. Sarah was no longer the new team member trying to prove herself. She was an integral part of an elite unit with a proven track record of success under the most challenging conditions. The nickname Falcon had taken on deeper meaning through actual combat experience. Her exceptional vision and marksmanship abilities had been tested under extreme pressure and proven themselves invaluable. But more importantly, her teammates had learned that her greatest strength was not her individual skills, but her ability to see solutions and opportunities that others might miss. 6 months later, when Sarah was promoted to lieutenant commander and selected for advanced leadership training, her father called to congratulate her on the achievement. "I'm proud of you, kiddo," he said. You've proven that determination and skill can overcome any obstacle. Thanks, Dad, Sarah replied. But the most important thing I learned is that individual achievement means nothing without teamwork and trust. The team made everything possible. As she looked out over the Pacific Ocean from her new office at Naval Special Warfare Command, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. 3 years earlier, she had been an intelligence officer with a dream of becoming a Navy SEAL. Today, she was a proven special operations leader with the respect of her peers and a record of successful missions under the most challenging conditions. The men who had once questioned her presence now sought her tactical advice and relied on her unique abilities. The nickname Falcon had evolved from a simple reference to her exceptional vision into a symbol of her ability to see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. In the unforgiving world of special operations, that kind of clarity and vision was more valuable than any individual skill or physical capability. Sarah Chun had earned her place among the elite warriors of the United States Navy, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The skeptical SEALs had finally learned why she was called Falcon, and they would never forget the lesson she had taught them about courage, determination, and the power of refusing to accept limitations.